Welcome everybody to our second lowdown of 2025. My name is Aubrey Gallegos. I'm the programs manager for the Good Meat Project, and we're thrilled to have you all join us today for our first real lowdown actually on poultry. We hope to have many more topics or many more lowdowns on this topic, and we're really excited to dive into this with our wonderful guests today. Just as a reminder, we offer these lowdowns as they're a peer-to-peer marketing series that we offer for free. And we're able to do that thanks to donations from folks like you. So if you enjoy today's lowdown, if you feel like you got something good out of it, we would appreciate any support that you can offer. And a few housekeeping things before we get started. You can stay on mute throughout the lowdown, but if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We will be keeping an eye on that. We'll make sure to get to everybody's questions, and we'll also open it up for a Q&A at the end of the lowdown. So we'll make sure that we get to all the topics we possibly can fit into the next hour. And we have a few community agreements. We'll let you read these on the screen here. But really just boils down to be kind, be respectful. We're just here to learn and support each other, farmer to farmer. So we are ready to dive right in. Let me make a couple introductions before we start this topic. So our topic today is balancing the equation of pastured poultry production. Like I said, we haven't really had a lowdown yet on poultry, and Meredith and I really wanted to start with this topic because we know that it can be really tough to make the numbers work, especially as production costs are going up. I'm also a poultry producer. Meredith, who is our esteemed programs coordinator, has also raised poultry, and so we both have experienced how challenging that can be. And so we're really thrilled to be able to have a conversation today around this topic and see if we can figure some things out. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest today. Ann Sherman is one of our guests joining us. She is from Of the Land LLC and is located in Cedarburg, Wisconsin. And Ben Grimes is from Dawnbreaker Farms in Hurdle Mills, North Carolina. Ann and Ben both run pastured poultry operations. They have really cool, distinct systems and also some overlaps in their values and in some of the things that they've figured out to try and make some of these numbers work. So with that, Ann and Ben, go ahead and take yourselves off mute, and we are going to go ahead and start with some questions. Welcome. Great. So, Ann and Ben, I want to really just dive right into our topic here with our first question. So, let's talk about the first part of balancing the equation of pastured poultry, which is production costs. I know that that's a pinch point for pretty much any farmer. So for each of you, can you tell me where have you found your production costs to be the highest, and what are some things you've figured out to try and bring those costs down? Ben, let's start with you if that's okay.
Sure. My highest cost is feed. And in my mind, you don't spend money on feed, you make money on feed. And so I'm not going to try to go with a cheaper feed or a different partner for the feed, because to me, that is an investment in the quality of the chickens.
Mm.
Next up is going to be, I got my spreadsheets right here. Next highest is going to be processing. We process on farm. We have pretty good systems, and there would be ways to bring it down with different equipment and things, but a lot of it's just training and experience, and it's ebbed and flows over the years. And right now it costs me like on average $4.54. Some birds cost more depending if we're doing more cut ups or value adding, and some birds cost less if we're just doing whole, but across the board $4.54, which also amortizes like my time, the equipment, facility, and everything. So that's a number that we can probably tweak a little bit, but over compared to what most people spend, I think that's a really, really good number that I'm confident with.
Mm.
So I guess in my mind, I'm not looking at so much of like how can I bring my costs down, but more how can I get more value out of the chicken? How can I get more value to the customer? And how can I, make sure that the business itself is balanced?
Yeah. And so you were saying for feed, you really look at that as not a feed cost, but a value that you're adding to your chicken. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of how you're translating that to the customer?
Sure. I mean, our customers, they're not looking for the cheapest chicken around. If you've already made the decision to buy something that's going to be more expensive than the grocery store, then you want the best stuff around. And so to me, when I have those conversations with the customers and the product that I'm growing, I really look at it as I want the best product on the market.
Mm.
And I want to be able to stand behind my product and have that relationship. So I'm not looking for how to cut prices or how to um, cut corners anywhere. For me, it's okay, what do I need to do to be able to get that best product, in the marketplace? And then what do I need to charge to make that happen? And I've always been able to raise prices to the point that I need to in order to get the price I need to for the product that I'm creating.
Mm.
And I'd say that also, I've been the most expensive guy around now. I've been growing chicken since 2014, and for most of that time, I've been the most expensive person in my area of Central North Carolina. And I've always found that that has actually been a selling point to me.
Mm.
So I've never tried to be, race for the bottom because I think you're just going to the bottom. And you cannot compete with grocery stores or even your local co-op or the Whole Foods. So to me, it's always been make the best product available, pitch it as the best product available because it is, and then people will pay for it because they want the best stuff around. And I'm, the most expensive guy around, but I also have been producing more chicken than most people. So it is a formula that has worked for me.
Yeah. Great. And man, there's so much in there that I'm excited to get into more, especially around building that customer base. And I know we have some questions too about on-farm processing, and so we'll dive into some of those. And let me move over to you. I know I want to hear your answer to what some of your highest production costs are, and I'll kind of specifically lead you into. I know that you have an interesting, a really cool way of handling those feed costs, and would love to hear a little bit about your systems there.
Okay. I would agree that it's feed, processing, and labor, and probably in that order. And processing, we do not do on-farm processing. We don't have a high enough volume to make all the requirements and so forth. So we do go out, and with recent changes in Wisconsin, a number of the poultry processors have closed. So now we drive several hours to the closest processor, which adds to the cost as well. And there's not much we can do about that right now. So what we do is in terms of cost is we're really looking at how do we feed the chickens. I agree that getting a cheaper feed is not the answer. And we've kind of gone to, well, we feed our goats and sheep on pasture. How can we do our chickens on pasture? And what do they normally, if we weren't feeding them, what would they be eating? And so we've kind of adapted our pasture to that and tried to provide plants that the chickens eat more broadleaf, less grass, to the extent that we can with the sheep and goats. It's a balance. And we've reduced our feed requirements by, on average, about 25% a year.
That's amazing. Will you tell us a little bit about what you planted and how you did that?
So it's been a little different years, and I can't say we have the perfect formula yet. One year we had volunteer oats that came up, and they happened to ripen at just the right time, about a week or two before our chickens were going to the butcher. So they put on a lot of weight. They were really happy jumping up and catching the grains, and that worked really well. Um, Other years it's more intentional where we'll plant, instead of just having like 2 legumes and 2 grasses, we've now got, I think, 8 or 10 different species. We added a new one each year to kind of see what's going, what'll go. So like chicory, they love clover, plantain, they eat dandelions, they love, which is good because we had a lot of them when we started. And so yeah, it's kind of evolving. I think we started more with having the volunteer wheat, and then we had a lot of dandelions. The dandelions are under control now. We're adding more intentionally what the seed is. I think eventually we might come to a place where we want to create a permanent spot for the chickens that we can kind of rotate them through where it's just theirs. So that we can really, get a really good blend for them and maybe create a little bit of an overstory cover protection as well, so that we don't necessarily have to have them in a tractor because we have great horned owls in the area and they keep a close eye on any chickens that might want to stray.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of uh, in the slightly dreamed, somewhat researched phase yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you both raise more than just chickens. And you said you are doing meat birds, and then you also have, what is it, goats, rabbits,
Goats, rabbits, sheep, chickens, ducks, turkeys.
ducks, and turkeys. Will you tell us just a little bit about your duck and turkey systems and what your markets are for those?
The duck market is really not very big at this point. It's primarily through farmers markets, and people are generally getting duck for a special event.
Yeah.
So, last year I think we sold 50 ducks. So we're very small on that range. But I don't know that I ever really want to go bigger. I think it's something that helps people come. Like people like to come to our booth at the farmers markets and say, well, what do you have now? Because it's different every time.
Yep.
And so it's kind of a way of keeping people interested. Um, we do Peking ducks, and we do them really like the chickens in a tractor. They need more room. They're a little harder on the pasture, so they need more room. But otherwise not that different in terms of the raising of them. They in a tractor can't forage very well. This is something we're trying to work with because they really like to grub or eat insects and things like that much more.
Mm.
And so we're looking for ways of kind of creating a a larvae factory that will go along with the tractor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the chickens and the turkeys really would like that too.
Yeah.
There are no bugs where the tractor went.
Yeah. Do black soldier flies grow where either of you are located?
Not naturally, no.
I mean, yeah, I see them around naturally, but I don't try to. I tried early on to cultivate them, but I've moved away from trying to do anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ben, I know you raise a few different kinds of poultry, and you have somewhat specific markets for each of the species that you raise. Will you tell us a little bit about your the poultry that you offer?
Yeah, so in 2024 we did 6,500 chickens, produced about 1,000 ducks, and sold a few more because we sold some from 2023, and then about 600 turkeys.
Mm.
Chickens and turkeys both are primarily going to individuals, either that through my sales channels, we sell at a farmer's market, I have a CSA, and home delivery. And then we also, but I do a lot of wholesale. So a lot of other farmers around here who may grow beef or pork or vegetables, they'll buy in my chicken and then they'll sell it to their customers. That's been the biggest sales channel for me. Um, and then there's also some institutions that have bought chicken that are going away now because of the illegal funding freezes. And there are some yeah, I mean, and a little bit goes to restaurants.
Mm.
but not much. I do move all of my chicken bags through restaurants, which is great. But generally speaking, most of it is to home consumers. Our ducks are the opposite. They're mostly going to restaurants. They're going to go to high-end restaurants who recognize that they want to work with local food, but that the ability to work with a local chicken is limited because as a consumer, American consumers, we think of chicken as cheap. And so when that chef tries to put a chicken on the menu, an expensive local chicken, they're not able to command the price point that they need to make that a viable option. But they can with duck, just because culturally we're associated that we're happy to, spend more on a duck for, whatever cultural education indoctrination we have in our minds. And so that really works well with the restaurants, and it's a
Mm.
nice, easy thing to do. I make a good, healthy profit on it, and it's super easy because we just raise the whole ducks. We don't have to cut them up. We just have a whole duck, package it, sell it, boom, done. It's great. Um, so I really enjoy ducks. Before the pandemic, we were doing a lot more ducks than we were doing chickens. But
Mm.
since the pandemic, that restaurant market has dwindled significantly. Um, and I also haven't gone out and pounded the pavement and tried to drum up business myself either. So it's also on my shoulders.
Yeah. And so for the ducks, did you say that you're mainly selling those to restaurants? Are you doing much direct to consumer sales with ducks, or is it mainly wholesale?
Yeah, I mean, not a lot, a couple hundred a year. Either that I sell at the farmer's market or that, other farms sell. So a couple hundred a year probably. Not significant. I wouldn't do it if it wasn't for the wholesale restaurant channels. So that's been the biggest market for ducks. Is wholesale to restaurants.
Mm.
I
And
have a
that's
question.
what justifies the scale. And also, just for context, I raise a Pekin duck. I raise Cornish cross chicken and broad-breasted white turkeys.
Great.
It sounds like that might be like, tell me if I'm wrong, but like a little bit of a moving target as far as your profitability between those channels, and feel free to chime in with your views as well. Like, do you have set goals, or do like that you want to maintain, or do you
Mhm.
see them shifting a lot?
Mm.
I mean, my goal is to make as much money as I can. Farming's hard, and none of us are paid enough for what we actually do. So my goal is always make as much money as I possibly can.
Mm.
Certainly with wholesale, I make less money, but at the same time, it's so much less labor. Um, if I load up a carload of chicken and I drop it off at 5 different places and I'm done, I walk away. Okay, that was like $8,000 worth of chicken that I just dropped off and I said goodbye.
Yep.
Versus loading it up in coolers, loading it up in the van, driving to the farmer's market, setting it up, having the whole display, selling it to you cut by cut. That is a lot of work. Um, so and I don't like it. To me, the customers are the hardest part of farming,
Mhm.
dealing with individuals. So sorry if any of my customers are on this chat, but it really is. It's really, really difficult. And so the more time that I can spend not in front of a customer, the more time that I have the ability to actually grow things and sell more. So I can grow a whole lot more, stay on the farm, flip it to a partner who's going to sell it to their channels, and then I can sell more. So yes, it is less profitability. Like in the context of, I got these numbers right here, like in context of a chicken right now, like retail, I have almost 100% margin. So like it cost me about $18.60 to raise a chicken in 20, I guess these are 2023 numbers. I've been lazy, I didn't do my 2024 numbers yet. And then I flipped it gross retail for just shy of $40. So that's
Okay.
almost 100% margin. Um, and then for wholesale, it's like it comes out to about $15 per bird, per chicken. That's cut ups, that's whole birds, that's across the board average. Doesn't matter where we sell it, that's across the board average. So, your profit margin goes down, but I can sell so much more. And it's easier and it's what I like to do. I think that I've been burned out by doing retail. And
Yeah.
so selling wholesale works for me personally. And I think that's a big part of the formula is like, what do you like to do? Do you like to go to the farmer's market? Do you know, I've got kids, like I like to have a normal weekend with them. Um, I think that's an important context is like, okay, how do you want to spend your time? To me, I'd rather pack up a couple boxes of chicken and deliver it and walk away from it than sit there and sell it piecemeal and make a little more money just so that I have more time to do things. Because there is a lot of expense that I think sometimes farmers don't actually, we just eat it. We eat our own labor sometimes, and don't think that's fair. So when you're looking at the context of selling at retail, like, okay, yes, I make 30% more selling at retail, but how much more do I lose in that
Well,
process?
I can tell you,
Yeah.
your
And
numbers are dead on. It's like it's 25 to 30% of the cost of selling a chicken at the farmer's
yeah.
market is going to the farmer's market.
Mhm.
Between the travel and the labor and the booth cost and the you need coolers, you need generators, maybe depending on where and when. And so yeah, it feels like you get more of retail, but you really don't. It ends up being about the same.
Yeah.
And it is, I think that, you have a great customer base yet. Now we're kind of on the front end of that. So we're developing a good customer base, but I don't think we can ever grow to a level where we can say, we can live off of what we're doing based on farmers markets. We've got to develop wholesale, and we are starting to, this year, our goal is to establish a CSA on our own and try to piggyback onto others as you're doing. The problem I've had when I'm talking to like vegetable farmers who are doing a CSA, especially, there aren't any meat CSAs right here that I can find right now, is how do you deal with the refrigeration freezing? Because the vegetable farmers don't have to do that. And they usually have a drop-off point. So do you do drop-off points? And if so, how do you maintain the temperature of the meat?
Are you asking that question directly to me?
I am.
We deliver to homes. Most of the year we can get away with just pack it in a box and use thermal mass in the car and refrigerated vehicles. So we use frozen meat, comes out of the freezer, pack it in a car. We have a big walk-in freezer, so we just load up the orders on pallets, leave it in there until right when we're going to load, and then just use that thermal mass of all the boxes together. And we're fine most of the year. Our delivery route isn't that long. And then when it is really hot, which it's North Carolina, so that is a lot of the year, we use ice packs on top of the boxes. We'll just put like, if you guys know what cooler shocks are, they're the best ice packs around, that I found at least. We use those on top of the boxes, and then that maintains it.
What is it called?
Cooler shock.
Cooler shock.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
great. Fantastic. Um, So, that's what we do. It would be nice to have refrigeration, but I think that it's hard to justify that expense and another vehicle for it, in the context of, farm. Like, there's lots of money in this, but it's the cash flow. So I've got all my money tied up in the freezer in the stuff, in the meat in the freezer and the birds outside. So there's lots of money, but getting the money today to be able to, invest in that is I don't see it's not a requirement, I guess. If I was selling fresh meat, which I do not, then it would be a totally different ballgame. But frozen meat has the ability to keep its mass, for much longer than fresh meat. So that's, I think, where the conversation in my head is it's not worth the investment. But we do definitely utilize that thermal mass, and we deliver right to your door. And then we have customers, if we're delivering to your door, then we expect customers have coolers, and we just drop it in the cooler. And then that's all we need to do. And then usually they'll grab it within a couple hours.
Yeah, for sure. And I also do a meat CSA. I do it with veggies, but for the meat component, I just have a pickup that's 1 hour long, right after work kind of hours, 5 to 6, and come get it then, and definitely rely on the thermal mass as well, to help keep the birds cold. And no one's ever, had
Mhm.
a issue with it thawing too much. And if it's thawed, I'm like, you know what, then it's for dinner tomorrow. Good job,
Yeah.
can
Yeah, I
definitely
mean,
play with that if you're trying to not have as many infrastructure costs as far as a meat CSA.
yeah, I mean, it would be great. It would be great to have refrigeration. Like, it's one of my, goals, and I put in a couple grants for it, because it would be really, really beneficial. But at the same time, it hasn't become a problem that I need to invest money in. So I haven't done it. The only time that we've never had an issue with meat thawing before we get it delivered. Only issue that we have is there's one public institution that we've delivered to that like really hates that we don't come with a refrigerated vehicle. But yeah, but they're not going to be a customer anymore because of the public funding or the funding freezes. So,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. And as we're talking too about, for folks who are deciding between CSA and farmers market and wholesale, one of the big considerations there, as we've said, is time. Do you both, when you're balancing your expenses and all of that, are you factoring in paying yourselves for your time? I know farmers can be certainly guilty of not doing that, and I'm curious if you all do that.
100%. Yeah,
It's
and
really,
I think it's
oh, go
critical.
ahead. It's
I mean,
really,
yeah, go ahead, Jan. Sorry.
it's really frustrating to me sometimes because farmers do not figure in their time. And I'm not sure they even figure in all their costs sometimes if they're kind of a hobby farm. And so they will charge prices that are either ridiculous or they're really not what they say they are. And then we're in a position of trying to explain why um, why we charge what we do without causing possible dispersion upon somebody who's charging $3, $4 a pound less, or
Mhm.
half as much for eggs or whatever. Do you have that problem too, or?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think that I've seen so many people come and go in the uh 12 seasons, 11 seasons that I've been farming. And I think that the number one thing is, yeah, not prioritizing your own time, not prioritizing your own quality of life. Because if you're not accounting for your time and you're not paying yourself, then you're gonna lead to burnout. Because there's almost anything else you can do that's gonna be a better business than farming. And so, yes, it's fun. Yes, there's a lot of quality of life things about it, but at the same time, if you don't pay yourself, then you're gonna burn out. And I think that it's also a question of respect, you know, that you should pay yourself. And I always advocate pay yourself first, especially those first years. It's really, really hard. I know I didn't pay myself, I think, until end of year two.
Mm.
But it's so critical to pay yourself. If I could start over, I'd start paying myself the very first thing I did. I just take some money right off the top, even if it was $10, just and go buy myself, a coffee and a sandwich. Because just to be like, this business works for me. I don't work for this business, but this business works for me. And you absolutely have to exert that control on the business, or it will just suck up all of your time, all of your money. And so the way that I do it now is I have an automatic withdrawal every single week from from the farm bank account to my personal bank account. And it's
Mhm.
just set up and it goes, and I don't interfere with it. And it doesn't matter how tight things are this week because they're always tight. Like, it's just in farming, you have so much money out the door all the time, and you have so much money invested in things that aren't turning into cash today. But I have always prioritized that payment to myself, because you're going to pay everyone else, but you are the most critical asset that the business has.
I 100% agree.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we had a couple questions about processing too, and I know you both mentioned that as being one of your uh top costs. And can you tell us a little bit about, I know you said that there's not a lot of access to processors. Um, can you just tell us a little bit about what that looks like for you, like some of the costs that you have to think about as far as even like crates and travel and do you still think about trying to make something work on farm, or is that just not feasible?
Um, 5 years from now, we may be doing that on farm. Right now, it's a bridge too far.
Yep.
We did it early on when we were just selling directly off farm and we didn't need to be inspected. But you can't grow very well that way. So right now, yes, we have crates. Crates are, I can't find them for less than $100 a piece.
Oh,
So what we do is we've taken some old rabbit cages and turned them into crates. And now we're at a point where we need a few more and we can build a rabbit crate. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's like, I don't know, 20, $30 maybe. And they work just fine.
Yeah.
And so that's how we transport them. There's the travel costs, both the vehicle costs and the time. And then time is a little tricky because it's not just drive time, but because it's so far away. It's like 2.5 hours, 2+ hours to this facility. Because it's one that actually does ducks and rabbits and nobody else seems to do those. We end up dropping them off one day, staying overnight and going back the next. So there's a hotel there that's decent and it's $85. And that's a lot cheaper than going back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a mini, I don't charge for all the time that I'm gone there, because I
Yeah.
can do other things. I can do my paperwork or I can go for a walk and not be interrupted. I'm learning to kind of like that chicken delivery. And then we have been relying on coming back. When we were a little smaller, we were using coolers and that was working fine. This year we have a new challenge because our turkeys are going there also. And we'll have, I think, 800 pounds of turkey to bring back.
Wow.
That will not fit in a few coolers.
Yep.
So I have a couple of engineers in the family and they all take thermodynamics. So we think we have a plan where we're making insulated panels that we can put in the bed of the truck and kind of make it be one giant cooler. But the other problem we have is when we do the fresh turkeys for Thanksgiving, we pick them up. We drop them off at 1 o'clock to be butchered on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. They give them to us at 3 o'clock, which blows my mind that they can do it that fast. So they're still warm inside when we're driving them home. So we're going to also have some small portable air conditioners running a pipe with holes in it through the middle of the birds to try to circulate the air. We'll see how it works. But when they get back here, people will be picking up their birds between 7 and 9, assuming all works well. And so they'll finish the cooling process themselves.
Wow, that's such a cool design. We'll have to check back in with you and see how all that works, but I love that. And yeah, I know processing's such a tricky topic for these workshops because it's different, state to state and region to region, what people have access to and what the regulations are. I know in Washington, there's some pretty strict regulations that make it tricky to process on farm. But for me, one of my highest production costs also is processing. Our closest USDA processor is about a 4-hour drive, and you have to be there at 6 in the morning. And so that's a rough that's a rough way
Yeah.
to go, but it's tough to do it on farm with the regulations. Ben, can you describe to us a little bit what your processing situation, your setup is like, and how that's worked out for you with kind of balancing those numbers?
Yeah. I mean, I think similar to you guys, when I started farming, the closest poultry processor was an hour and a half away. And they closed up shop the same spring that I started, so spring of 2014. And they the next closest option was like 3 hours or something west to the mountains. And at that time, I couldn't dream of doing enough scale to justify that trip.
Yeah.
And so we did it on farm and it was awful and it was terrible and it was cost us so much money to do and we didn't have the infrastructure and there were long days and I broke my body, broke my soul, all the things. Don't recommend it. If you have a processor, use a processor. Is my honest opinion. North Carolina does have the best laws possible for poultry exemption for processing on farm. They took the federal exemption and applied it as is. They didn't put any other restrictions on it. So we can do up to 20,000 birds a year. We can cut up. We can sell anywhere in the state. We can wholesale. We can make sausage. We just can't apply heat is our limitations. And so it has worked for me, but it's been a grind and now we have an established system, but we haven't always, and it was tough as hell. And so I think your bottlenecks with processing on farm are getting to enough scale where it is viable for you to process on farm. If you're doing 20 birds by yourself every week, fine, if you want to be that guy. But that is a tough grind and that will wear you down. I know people who do it, but I really have always shot for scale. I think that for poultry production, you need both scale in terms of the number of birds you do a year and the birds per batch. And so I said, if this is going to be a viable business and not just like a job for me, then I need to be able to do scale. And to do that, I need to have systems, I need to have equipment, I need to have employees. And so I did that, and it's not easy, and some days are better than others. Inevitably employees are going to call out sick. They're going to have car problems, they're going to have relationship problems, whatever comes up. So it's really a pain, but at this point in my journey as a farmer, I couldn't imagine taking it anywhere and them doing a better job.
Mm.
And and now we've got it down where we can do it cheaper than processors and we've got good systems. But I mean, I've invested so much stinking money into that facility. And I do count that in my processing costs. And when I say that $4.50 per chicken, that does include amortization of the facility and the equipment. But it is a lot more nuanced, and it's you have if you have a processor within shooting range and you want to do any significant scale, it's going to be a whole lot easier driving somewhere than spending, I spent probably 4 or 5 years before I had an actual working system that actually I could do any significant scale of birds. And even now we're still refining it, still investing in it. So I think it's a mixed bag. Certainly over the long run, you can get a good system that works and you can do it cheaper and better than the processor. But it is a long slog and it is not fun.
Yep.
Now, if you happen to, come into this as a second job and you've got a lot of money and you just want to throw it at a facility, have fun, go for it. Because you can build a really nice facility and you know, have fun with it. That wasn't my context. I built it slowly over the years. And there's, you know, if you're going to get into the poultry business, especially processing, like the American Pastured Poultry Producers Association is the best organization out there. And there are so many wickedly awesome poultry farmers who are in that community, and there's a listserv, and they will answer your questions and help you, you know, grow your business, you know, facilitate your processing bottlenecks and everything. So I think lean on the community around you and, you know, learn from them and experience from them if you're going to go the route of processing on farm. But it is a whole lot simpler just to go to a processor.
Yeah. And we're gonna open it up for a Q&A in just a moment. So if anybody has questions, I know there's a couple here in the chat already, but feel free to drop those in the chat as we're going. But just to kind of round out this part of the conversation, I have two more questions that I'd love to get your thoughts on. One is, can you each tell us just a little bit within your own comfort with how you know, you don't have to share specific numbers with us, but just give us an idea of how are you handling cash flow for your poultry systems year to year? Because I know that is the tough part, is getting all those costs up front. And if you can also include a little bit about some of your startup costs with infrastructure and coops and equipment and all of that. And would you be open to starting?
Sure. We're still on the front end a little bit more. My goal is that by 5 years, there are not cash flow issues, meaning at the beginning of the year, we have enough to carry through. We're actually, we're close actually this year. But those first years, everything that you put in comes from some other source, like your personal finances. That's just investing in the business. And I believe that, you know, if by year 5 you haven't gained the volume and the efficiencies to be generating your own cash flow from the business, then you should rethink being in the business.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know part of that too is selecting your breeds for chicken. And I meant to ask this earlier, and I know most folks are doing Cornish cross. I know you each both do Cornish cross, but I also know a lot of farmers are interested in heritage breeds, and there's, you know, a big conversation to have. I see Ben shaking his head. As far as like whether you can make that profitable. And you had you have a really cool approach to that. Will you tell us a little bit about how you handle the Cornish cross heritage situation?
Even though the Cornish are on pasture, which I was told you couldn't do, that they would not forage, I still think that the heritage breeds, some of them really do have a superior meat. But it's not affordable for most people. So if people really want heritage, I'll say, you know, we will grow the birds for you. This is what it's going to cost. Do you want to do it?
Yep.
And you know, we'll if we can get enough of a batch to make it worthwhile, then that's what we would do. But I just saw from one of the hatcheries, can't remember which one it was, that they have developed a fast-growing hybrid, fast-growing heritage breed. And it's supposed to be ready for market in 10 weeks, 9 to 10 weeks. But I haven't finished researching it. I'm kind of like, so if it was modified so that it grows faster, what makes it still a heritage breed?
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. And even, you know, even 9 to 10 weeks is, if you're able to grow Cornish cross at 6 or 7, that's a lot of extra feed and time. But I love that on your website, you know, you're very transparent, saying we raise Cornish cross, they are on pasture, we believe in this, and we understand why you would, you know, we also love heritage breeds, and we understand why you might want heritage. It costs us double. So we will grow them, but just know you're gonna have to pay double for it. And so it's also educating the consumer about the value of those heritage breeds. All right, Ben, I would love to hear your thoughts on cash flow and I know you have some opinions too about Cornish cross and breed selection there.
Yeah, I mean, just I can give that part quickly is just, I mean, one, Freedom Rangers are not a heritage breed. Okay,
Mm,
let's get it
yeah.
straight. Heritage breed is going to be something that's been, I think, like post isn't 50 years or something. You know, when I started, I think it was like 1950 was a cutoff. Maybe now it's 1960, but Freedom Ranger is not a heritage breed.
Yep.
You know, heritage breed is going to be like your Rhode Island Red, your Buff Orpington, something like that. You know, that's going to be a stew hen is what you're looking at, or like a scrawny rooster. Okay, Freedom Ranger is still an improved hybrid variety of, maybe they're true to form, but they are an improved variety that's meant to grow big and fast. Just putting that out there.
My
Um,
understanding is they're a hybrid of some heritage breeds, so they're not technically a heritage, but they
so it's
have
a
some
Cornish
of those
cross,
breeds.
right?
Yeah, they're definitely a cross. Yeah.
So, w- but I think that in my general perspective as a farmer, like farming is hard. Like farming is really, really hard. Most people don't pay you enough for what you do anyways. And so why make it harder? Like you're not going to get paid more for this heritage breed. If you really like it, it makes you happy, go for it. You know, if that's what you really want to do. For me, it's just I don't like chickens. You know, to me they're just fertilizer for the soil and money. And I am at the point where I want to do, you know, cut back times so that I can spend more time doing stuff with my family or spending more time on the farm doing things that I do enjoy. So if I'm not getting paid more, then why would I do it? Is my general perspective. Um, and I think that does lead into cash flow because it's like, okay, I need to make this business work. There's so much capital required. Any other business that had as much upfront capital costs as a farmer, you know, in terms of equipment, infrastructure, land, and that had as much costs for the actual production of the item and the risk. Okay, we take on so much risk as farmers, and we have such long periods of cash flow that we're able to get a return on. Um, any other business would have crazy 4, 6, 8, 10 times margins. Okay. I'm lucky if I can get a 2x margin selling at the farmer's market. You know, I'm way lower. You know, it's like 70, depending on the product, 70, 50% margin selling wholesale. And that's already so hard. If I could just buy a chicken today and flip it, that'd be an easy business and I'd be making loads of money. But the problem is always that cash flow. So you have to make enough money basically to cover that cash flow gap. And I think, you know, we were talking about the production cost going up at the beginning. That's getting harder is that cash flow because I can raise my costs. So on a batch of birds, for example, I'm just going to pull up a spreadsheet here. Like on a batch of birds, you know, my set costs of, you know, this is a big batch. So this was 1,300 birds. Total cost was $23,000. So by the
Mm,
time I got it into the freezer, that was $23,000 that I had to cash flow over the course of 8 weeks. Okay? Like that's a lot of money
wow.
for an 8 week period. And then I have to sell that in dribbles over the next several months. So to be able to cash flow that, you have to have high enough margins to do that. And I can raise up my price if my feed price goes up, the cost of chicks goes up, or whatever goes up. I can raise my price to accommodate that price increase. But what I can't do is help the cash flow. So in order to
Mm,
help that cash flow gap, like I would probably have to raise my price. I don't have a formula, but let's say I'd have to raise my price 2x for every dollar that it increases in cost. I probably have to go 2x up just to help
mm,
that cash flow gap. And that's not, so then instead of having 100% margin, I might need 125% margin to fix that gap. So it used to be easier when prices were so much lower, but now that prices are getting higher, it's harder to fix that cash flow gap. And honestly, if I were in the position where I had to start today, where I had to buy land in today's market, where I had to buy equipment in today's market, I don't know if I would be able to. I don't know. I know I would not be able to make it in today's market. So I'm not even, I'm less than 40 years old. I'm 39 years old. I've been farming for a little over a decade. And I already know that I could not start today. And that's messed up. And so like I have a huge advantage just being in it. And 10 years isn't even that much for most businesses. But because I bought in at a time when things were so much lower, it's giving me that huge advantage. So if you're starting out today, I don't know. I mean, there's farmers in my area who are like, can I even farm here? Am I just going to be renting for the rest of my life? Or do I go somewhere else where land is cheaper? And so I don't have, I wish there was an easier way to go about that. But I mean, that cash flow is just so hard. And we have to just make the most amount of money we can to try to bridge that gap. And I wish there was an easier way. I wish that cash flow wasn't such a burden, but it is. And I don't have the magic formula except make as much money as you can.
Yep. Yep.
And
And
so, and I think you also, again, I'm going to emphasize this with poultry. In order to be profitable, you have to have scale. You have to have scale both in the terms of number of birds you do per batch and the number of birds that you do per year. Both have to be there or you will not hit the scale to make it a viable enterprise.
yeah. And man, this hour has gone by so fast. We have just about 5 minutes left, so I want to wrap us up. Let me wrap up with well, one thing, if anybody has any last burning questions, we could probably hit one more, so feel free to drop it in the chat. I know we're also having there's some great questions, and Ben, you've been doing a great job of answering in real time in the chat here. And we will include links to both of your websites, social media, so that folks can also find you and maybe even follow up if they have further questions. But let me just ask as a kind of wrap up question. You know, Ben, you were saying that for folks who are starting now, this is a tough time to start a poultry business. So for folks who are on here, what advice would either of you give? Or let me rephrase it actually, what do you wish you had known when you first started your poultry operations that might be helpful to folks who are listening in today? Anne, do you want to start if you have it ready?
I think not uh, losses. We never talk about losses. And I guess intellectually I knew that there had to be losses, but it's not until you get into it that you really understand what that means. And I think the other thing is, we had, I think exactly what Ben is talking about, we had assumed that we would be able to grow from the land that we have. And it looks like that really isn't going to be possible. There's a lot of reasons why farmland is not staying farmland and is not affordable. And but that doesn't change the fact that I don't know how somebody who is young and does not have, you know, a depth of resources can get started. I just don't see it. And the farmer next to us realized half of his land is rented. He's a dairy farmer and he's watching piece by piece that land being sold and being used for non-farm purposes.
Yep. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that story is the same here in Wisconsin and North Carolina. It's the same story that agricultural land, you know, where I live is being, we have some buffers that prevent wide scale subdivisions like you see, but it's still being divided up into 5-10 acre lots. Low density suburbia is what I think this land is becoming. And it is like if you're working, if you're telecommuting to the West Coast or you're commuting to Durham or Raleigh, then you can spend a lot more money for that land. Especially if you're from California or New York and you're coming and you're like, oh, the South's so cheap. Um, and you're driving up the cost of land for people who actually want to make a living. At the same token, most farmers are burnt out and done. They've been doing this for generations. And they're like, there's no money in this. I'm out. I can cash in. So I can't blame the farmers. I think that if I were to start today, I mean, either I'd go somewhere way out in the boonies where there's just you know, land is still accessible, and but then you're limited on your markets, so then you're probably shipping. Or there's still a lot of land around. You just have to get creative in your relationship. Like you might not be able to own the land, which sucks. It sucks. But there's a lot of land that you can lease. So like one thing about poultry is it's a young man's game. I'm pushing up on 40. I don't know how many more years of scaled up pastured poultry production I can do. Um, but long-term beef is the direction I want to go, and I don't have access to enough land. So it's like, okay, what kind of creative relationships can I have with my neighbors? Because they've all got land and a lot of them aren't using it. So can I lease land? Because lease land is still really cheap. I can lease an acre of land for $100 an acre. It's cheap. And so that land is still accessible. You just have to have the relationship with it. That you might not be ideal. I think that's kind of the direction I would go if I was starting today, and it is the direction that I'm going now, trying to grow into beef. So I have 20 acres, but I'd love to have 100 and 200 acres of beef production. And so that looks like me having different herds on different plots of land throughout the area.
Yeah.
It's not ideal, but it's also kind of the context of the economy that we're in.
Yep.
The other thing that surprised me is the role of government, and how it affects the ability for processors to exist, but also the use of land. There was a piece of land near us that would have been very useful to our production, and it needed conditional use. And this is supposedly a farming, rural area. One member of the board was a farmer, and they could not understand the concept of grazing capacity. All they heard was how many animals, and they were like, oh, it's going to be a feedlot. And it's like, no.
Yeah, yeah. And
Well, we want farming. It's like, this is farming.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And man, thank you both for sharing, especially what we're trying to do in these lowdowns too is get real about the landscape. And this is a tough time for poultry farmers, especially beginning poultry farmers. And to offer a little hope too, Meredith and I are working on and GMP in general, we're working on some resources coming up in the future, specifically for pastured poultry producers. So we're hoping to offer some additional support. We also have, if you're not familiar, we have a switchboard, which is essentially it's kind of like a mix between Craigslist and Facebook, but it's only for folks who are in food and farming, who are in meat. And so that's a great place to see if you can connect with other folks in your region for sharing equipment. Or, I know for me, delivery costs for feed are really high. And so splitting that with a farmer nearby is very helpful. So if you're not on our switchboard, I would recommend getting on there. And then Meredith, if you don't mind sharing our slide one more time, we also just launched some of you may be familiar with this, but we just launched a Good Meat Finder. And this is one of the ways that Good Meat Project is trying to help drive more customers to folks who are doing values-based farming across the country. And it's also not just farmers, but also butcher shops, retail, restaurants. And so this is both a great way for customers to find you, but also a way if you're interested in doing wholesale or selling to restaurants, this is also a way for you to find restaurants that are sourcing from local farms. So if you're not on there already, that's a gentle plug to make sure that you get on there. It takes all of 2.5 minutes to list, and it's free of charge. And then a few resources that were mentioned today. APPA is an amazing resource for pastured poultry. And Food Animal Concerns Trust is also a great resource if you're getting started. I know I started my operation with a small grant from them that was really helpful in getting the ball rolling. And we'll make sure to include links to those resources in the follow-up email. So we're just a couple minutes over time, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up here. I will say I think we could do a whole day on this. It's a huge topic. Really appreciate you both sharing your expertise, sharing your numbers, being so transparent, and yeah, this has been a really helpful and insightful conversation. We'll make sure to send the email out to everybody with a link to the recording, and as I said, the resources that we've mentioned. And we'll also include ways to get in contact with Ben and Ann if you want to continue this conversation. Thank you so much, Ben and Ann, for your time. We really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for joining. One last thing, keep an eye on your email. We have some exciting lowdowns in the works for the rest of the year. We're going to be including butchers and chefs in some of our future lowdowns. So we are expanding into new topics, new territories, and we're really excited to share these. So if you're not on our newsletter already, go ahead and subscribe so that you can be the first to know when we will be announcing our next lowdown. So keep an eye on your inbox. All right. Thanks everybody so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.